my school memories really are about the generation that I come from. Okay. And it was the introduction of real computing. The software company I worked for at the time, one day I was actually doing weapons guidance systems and analysing data on rockets that were actually going.
And you're like, I've only done Space Invaders.
But it was just the maths. It was just the maths behind it. I didn't get to do all the exciting bits and pieces. Another day I'd be writing a driving simulator for Ford of Europe, who were trying to sell new cars. Or I'd be trying to animate Mickey Mouse to actually sell sort of pharmaceutical concepts.
In this episode, we speak to Jonathan Underwood. Jonathan's got a fascinating career that started as a computer engineer and included him working in the dot-com boom in Silicon Valley for businesses like Google and Oracle.
But we were about 4-5 months away from IPO and 9/11 happened. Everything stopped.
What is it about what you do now that excites you the most?
So for me, it's...
I always start these things by saying thank you for joining, because I want people who have achieved great things to have their stories told, and you're going to have to get used to me giving you compliments as we go through. The place I always start is, where did you go to school and did you enjoy it?
Oh, goodness. Well, I grew up as a local lad, and I've kind of gone full circle, because I actually grew up in a small town, Biggleswade in Bedfordshire. And I literally, having lived across the world, 5 years in California, in Australia, across Europe, etc., I'm back 3 miles from Dunton. Dunton is the village that's 3 miles outside of Biggleswade, where I now live.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's, at the time it was probably family. It was, aging parents, and you just think, I'd like to be closer to home. It was starting a family, having that sort of side of the life that brought me, I guess, back to the places I was familiar with and what I knew.
I've done the same thing, by the way. Grew up in Tring,
really?
Gone to New Zealand,
everywhere,
America, everywhere.
Yeah.
Some places I probably shouldn't have gone, and now I'm back in Tring. So, school, if we talk secondary school, big secondary school, small secondary school, private secondary school, grammar, what was it?
Just a small secondary school. Yeah. Again, local. Everything was local for me. I mean, I think my school memories really are about the generation that I come from. Okay. And it was the introduction of real computing. And that's what just inspired me. So it was a case of, those first options to have computer lessons and really start to understand how to program and what was involved with the computer.
So talk to me about an early computer lesson. Talk to me about when you first had a computer lesson. What were they teaching you? How old were you and what were they teaching you?
Oh, goodness me. I would have been maybe around 10, 11, something like that. And things like the BBC Micro was starting to come in. Okay. But before that, there was things like Commodore PETs and stuff like that we were starting to learn operating systems. But I think the key to me was really understanding how a computer worked.
So not the application that's on it, how it's actually working.
Yeah, and I find this today, there's a whole generational, I think, expiry date that's coming up very soon, because I now know very few people in my sort of generation that really had to know how a computer worked in order to make it do something.
Well, because the user experience now is so good that you don't need to know anything about it. It just happens and comes to you.
So the programmers today, they just look for a library that's already written. Yeah. They don't necessarily need to know what's happened. Whereas when I go back to my school days, those sorts of school years, it was a case of I've got to know how screen memory works. I've got to know how a clock cycle works, how you actually change bits and bytes.
Love that. So do you reckon everyone in your school had that same thing, or did you just have a particular passion for it?
Funnily enough, I actually had a terrible experience in my computing school lessons. Right. And I'll tell you why, because at the time, my teacher, who will remain anonymous, he basically spent most of our lessons in his little cupboard programming and writing software for things like ZX Spectrums or, Sinclair models and things like that. And he was getting code out there and selling stuff. And pretty much the whole of my year failed their exams. And I had to beg, to sort of say, I want to do the A-level. I've got to do computing. I love these things. So it was a bit of a shoddy start, really, in terms of computing. But I just had that passion for how do I make these things do the things that I want to do. Yeah.
Did you take that out of school? So you liked it in school?
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, I absolutely badgered my parents for how can I get hold of a computer, and my first computer was literally a 1K ZX81 Sinclair.
Was it a Christmas present?
I think it was birthday, but similar concept.
Yeah.
And it was a case of what on earth can you achieve in 1K of RAM?
So tell me what the maximum limitation of a computer that you had when you were at school has. What's the most impressive thing that computer was capable of?
Oh goodness, you could on a Sinclair Spectrum, for example, or even the ZX81, in 1K of memory, you could still create games such as a Space Invaders or a Scramble, or those sorts of old names that people probably don't even remember these days. And it was amazing what could be squeezed into 1K or 1024 bytes of bits of machine code information.
That's a good. Considering all the things that you've gone on to do, starting there. So you go through school. You've got this interest in computing, which has carried you through your whole career. Yeah. Right. Did you go to university, or did you go straight into the world of work?
Well, actually, I went into the world of work first of all, and then ended up in. After a couple of years, I started part-time going to university. So I was sponsored by my first employer, which was great. But my first employer was actually around coding. And they just took me on the merits of a reference written by my computer studies A-level teacher.
But not the guy that was in the cupboard writing code to sell it.
Not that one, no. That was the years before.
Unbelievable. So you finish school, you go into... And at that time, how structured is the path for you? Is it just come in and help us, or is it here's the things we're going to teach you? Was there an onboarding experience? Like, how did it all work?
Seriously, computers were so new that the software company I worked for at the time, one day I was actually doing a sort of weapons guidance systems and analysing data on rockets that were actually going.
And you're like, I've only done Space Invaders.
But it was just the maths. It was just the maths behind it. I didn't get to do all the exciting bits and pieces. But another day I'd be writing a driving simulator for Ford of Europe, who were trying to sell new cars, or I'd be trying to animate Mickey Mouse to actually sell sort of pharmaceutical concepts and analysis.
So would you say you're an engineer by background? Is that how you describe your early career? Were you an engineer?
I suppose a software engineer. Yes. Very practical skills, very logical thinking. And I think that's the thing that I always look for in people is that logical background. Yeah. If you can, if you can sort of give you a screwdriver and you can work out how to build a space shuttle from first principles, and that goes back to the comment about early computing. Yeah. The people today don't necessarily understand how computers operate. So how can you possibly make it efficient and do the best possible scenario for what you're trying to achieve?
I love it. So at that time, did you think that your career was in computing, or were you just doing something you enjoyed?
I loved this. I just wanted to do fun things with computing. So that, like I say, in those early days, the software company I was working for would get any kind of piece of software. It was just bespoke software management or production. So that's why I had such an eclectic mix of customers that we were working for with writing stuff.
Amazing. And I suppose at that time there wasn't the principles of a software engagement is engineers, project managers, business analysts, architects, any of that sort of wrapper that goes around.
Nothing like that.
It was just, or was it just your company would go to companies and say, we can build you some software and we'll hurl some engineers at it?
Basically.
And how long will it take? Who knows?
I mean, one of the great stories that I do tell people is that, within my early career, I actually had my managing director of the company. So this was the second company I was working for in my career. And the managing director came up to me. And I just always remember his words. His words were, goodness me, you can speak binary and English. We need to get you in front of customers.
See?
And it was. And that's how a product background really started. Because at the time, you never had product managers. You just had engineers and engineers who could architect things. And if you could speak to a business language as well as the technical language, then you basically started designing. And, well, it was early days, but I can't even think when product management as a term really came about. But it was way after all the stuff that I was working on at the time.
So there's a period there at job 2. So you're what, 23, 24, something like that, where you realise that actually there's a bit more to me than just the engineering side. So then you split off?
I don't think I realised this.
Somebody astute realised it.
My whole career has been lucky events where other people have sort of said, hang on, have you ever thought of?
Yeah.
And
that's for their gain using your skills.
Yeah, basically. But so yeah, I mean, at the time, we were starting to invent things such as fourth generation languages. And I remember that second job, the excitement for me was all around the user interface.
Okay.
Because this was when the Mac was just starting out. And in fact, we actually had a Macintosh computer sitting in the corner, and we were trying to emulate the front end on an IBM PC. From scratch, so and literally plugging a mouse in for the first time and saying, well, what does this do? And so we could create an operating system, and as part of that operating system, you realise, well, how is anyone going to write software to run in this operating system? Yeah. And I can throw old names, things like OS2 was another operating system competing with Microsoft Windows at the time. And
so as you're doing this, your mates outside of work, what do they think about it? Because you would have been unique in what you were doing. Was there mates outside of work that were like, what the, like, we don't know what Jonathan's doing?
I suppose there was. There was,
and your parents as well, who were like, what the hell?
Yeah, I mean, in my year, there were only 3 guys that actually did A-level computing.
Yeah.
So that kind of gives you that sort of breakdown of my friendship groups and a very focused set of individuals that wanted that technology.
I love it. So you're going through and you get to your like mid-20s. And you're doing. When does sales creep into it, or does sales not creep into it? Because I feel like most people at some point.
Sales does creep into it. I think not necessarily at this time, although in a way I suppose it was more pre-sales. So I was starting to be taken out with the sales guys to explain how we could do.
I bet you were like, what the hell do these blokes do?
They had their purpose, but for me it was just an interesting conversation with somebody who had a problem, and
which is the best sales
my knowledge was I know how to solve these problems. Yeah. Although it was rather frustrating in those days because, we were trying to develop these fourth generational languages, which basically is your first what you see is what you get type environments and windows and dragging things and that sort of stuff. Yeah. But at the time, it was so new. We were kind of selling this is so simple to program. And seriously, a large insurance company took us up with that. And really? And I ended up having to look after a team of very inexperienced people who were just trying to understand word processors, let alone trying to drag objects and write what is effectively event-driven code behind different objects.
Isn't it amazing how far things have come?
Oh, goodness me, yes, yeah. I mean, at the time, I remember getting so frustrated. I said to the salesperson, rather foolishly, I said, you know what, I'd rather we just forgot all of this. I'll go and write it. Give me 3 weeks and I can rewrite all of this and get it back to them. And unfortunately, a couple of days later, he came to me and said, your idea, we've agreed to do it. So get on with it. But we did. We managed to deliver it. And because the whole purpose of what we were doing was fairly simple. It was a customer database with a nice looking front end. Yeah. That's what people were buying. That was the sexy sale part by now. Yeah. And that front end, we ended up, we'd built the operating system, we built the language on top of it. Yeah. But in the world, of course, we saw Windows, OS2, Presentation Manager. They were all, competing at that level. Yeah. So we basically dropped the operating system and put the fourth generation language on top of those platforms, so you could run it on top of the Windows. But
do you know it's interesting because, like, I know what you do now. I had no idea how much of a computer science, computer engineering background you came from. Absolutely no idea. And the beauty of that is because whenever we've had conversations about what you do now, you don't talk about any of it. You talk about user experience and customer experience and all of that good stuff, which is the right way to do it, by the way. So, local school.
Yeah.
First job, local-ish.
Yeah, sort of 10 miles down the road.
Okay.
But
second and third and fourth. When did you start?
10 miles the other side of the town.
Okay, so you're still in the local area. When was the first job where you moved afield?
So the job we describe all this operating system stuff in. So I was actually there for 9 years, even 10 years.
Wow.
And it was successful. Yeah. It was in fact so successful that the owner actually sold the business.
Okay.
And that just wasn't good. We'd grown it from about 30 people up to 200 people. We'd opened offices in the US, in Australia, and I'd done a little bits of travelling because I was kind of their point person.
Oh, business travel, by the way, when you started, how did that feel? How old were you when you first started doing business travel?
Oh God, I don't know. Just in
your 20s.
In the 20s somewhere.
How good is that? You're like, they're paying for this flight.
You know what? Interestingly, I didn't want to go.
Did you not?
No, I didn't want to go. I didn't enjoy it at all. I found it more just being away from family, friends. Yeah. I wasn't as secure. I think, I wasn't the backpacker type. I didn't want to sort of have that gap year. I didn't want to travel Asia and find out. I was very much more a homeboy, which is, in my family. My family hadn't had travellers or anything like that in the past. Yeah. All my holidays growing up had been in this country. Right. So the thought of actually getting on a plane and going to work in Australia for a year or New Zealand or whatever.
But good for you for doing it. Well, it didn't come naturally and it wasn't easy. Good for you.
Yeah, but it just gave lots of opportunities and experience moving about. But
so you get a bit more used to it, and then the company sells, and clearly after the company sells, there's just that lull, right? Yeah,
whereas we used to work for Bob.
Is that what it was?
His name was Bob. He started the company, and we all worked for Bob. We used to have the company barbecues in the back out there, these sorts of things.
Bob's barbecues.
So when unfortunately Bob sold the company, I mean, great for him, fantastic. The new management, it just wasn't the same. Really wasn't the same.
So did you look for a new job, or did a new job find you?
So I looked for a new job at the time because I saw other people starting to go, and I'm thinking, hang on, I've been here 10 years or almost 10 years. Yeah. And I started to realise that actually there were bigger salaries if you started to move around.
Apparently so.
And suddenly I realised, hang on, I could probably double a salary if I go and work for someone like Oracle.
Is that where you went?
So I had been building, basically, within this same sort of tool set, we'd been building early CRM systems, sales, marketing, and management systems, but basically customer databases, etc. So I also had delivered, or I designed and delivered the first Virgin Direct call center. So because they launched PEPs, so financial services, it all kind of tied in. We were doing bits of insurance here, there, and everywhere with lots of the top insurance companies building point of sale systems. But I ended up going to Oracle.
That must have been a massive shock from working for Bob.
It was very different. It was very different. I was very lucky. I had a choice of do I go to Siebel Systems at the time or Oracle, and I chose Oracle. I thought Oracle was much more welcoming. Siebel was very much the sell. Bottom 5% are out the door at the end of the year. All of this sort of thing. Whereas Oracle was much more holistic and longer term.
And what was the job when you went to Oracle?
It was basically just they refer to it as a consultant. So interesting. I never really programmed at that point. Right. So I was moving away from programming and the real technology to, I guess, the pre-sales, the consultant selling.
So you'd gone, was that in London?
No, it was Reading, first of all.
Fine.
Although I used to go to the London office when necessary.
That must be a bit of so you've gone like in Bob's business. I'm just going to call it Bob's business,
it
right?
Was so
and you were at Oracle and you're like, and now I'm working in London. And was that your first job? I ask this question every single time. Was that your first job where you saw the business card and you were a bit like, yeah, come on, I've done really well? Or does that come later in your career?
We had business cards with Bob.
Thanks, Bob. But was it because it's Oracle? Do you know what I mean? Was there like a moment where you're like, oh yeah, do you know what? I'm really proud of myself.
We used to talk about the big red magnet.
Yeah.
And it was literally, just as a consultant, I would have CTOs phone me up saying, I want to buy Oracle. I mean, it was, and we used to refer to the Oracle bus, which was suddenly when there was a sale there would be about 20 people that want to jump on the Oracle bus and just, we're all involved in that sale.
Yeah, and have a line item.
And at the time, because of my background, I'd basically been brought in as pretty much their CRM type person.
Yeah.
And Oracle were buying up lots of different types of CRM technology and trying to merge them all together to create one area. So I was able just to talk around that because I'd been working those sorts of areas for the last 5 years.
Felt like you were sat in an armchair just getting carried everywhere. Or was it hard work?
No, I think it was hard work. Yeah. It was hard work. But I didn't actually stay at Oracle very long, if I'm honest, because I was then taken away. I moved with Oracle over to California.
Yeah.
So fantastic working in Redwood Shores with Oracle's head office. Their HQ
that must have been. So they came to you and said, "Hey, we want you to moved to the US.
Well, there was a little bit of to and fro. It was like, because I was traveling over there anyway, learning new technologies, bringing that back to EMEA basically.
Yeah.
And then this opportunity came up, and there was something we referred to jokingly as the Oracle Escape Tunnel, because there was a little .com that was situated about 200 yards away from the Oracle head office.
Yeah.
And it was a small integration.com, but it actually had people like Ray Lane, who was the COO of Oracle at the time.
Yeah.
He was actually on the board. We had the CTO of FedEx on the board. So it was one of the best .com businesses.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was ex-Oracle people.
Okay.
So my boss had moved there, and he basically said, why don't you come and join us? And so there was like a 200-person .com business. We were actually the first $1 billion valuation on the on 101.
Really? So
You
you moved with Oracle, but only because the guy from Oracle knew that he was going to hatch you in the tunnel.
Well, I was at Oracle a little bit longer than that.
Fine.
But yeah, no, very quickly afterwards, it was a case of, well, we've got this other building 200 yards away. And
was it affiliated with Oracle at all?
No.
Love these Silicon Valley stories. They're the best.
So these were the days where literally the meetings were on the tennis courts and
what
things
year
like
was
that.
this, roughly?
Oh, goodness me.
Late 90s?
I'm guessing, 2000, I think, 2001 maybe. Yeah, 2000, I think.
Epic. So what did that business do?
So that business was all about integration.
Okay.
And the proposition was, look, you've got multiple ERP systems. You've got Oracle, JD Edwards at the time, and things like that, and whatever. And what we did was an extraction layer. And it was literally just take the data from all of those and make it look like a single application.
Yeah. We've got a service bus.
Well, we'll get on to that, because then after this company, I ended up working at Tibco down in Palo Alto, and Tibco is the information bus company.
So you're a homebody that likes computer science, right? And you've got your teacher in your local school coding, and then all of a sudden you're in Silicon Valley and companies are demanding you join them. That must have felt awesome.
I was naive. I didn't realize. I was just excited by the new technology.
Yeah.
Just that's a really great idea. Yeah, I'd like to be involved in that.
Isn't that a pure
how
thing?
can I think about that?
Is there ever a time when you miss that naivety and like purity? Because clearly you know more about the world now.
Well, a little bit more. Yeah.
That must have felt amazing, because it is just a purity. Like where you're just like, oh, these people are doing something cool. I'll go over there. That's lovely.
You said at the beginning of this about compliments, and I think the interesting thing about sitting in this chair is I've never really had this conversation. Yeah. So to me, it's just, well, that was the next thing I did, and then you ended up with this, and there was this opportunity. So
you were in demand.
The next thing.
You're in demand. Yeah. You're in demand because you did something well, and they wouldn't have asked you to move to California. Oracle wouldn't have flown you from the UK to California and back once if you didn't add value.
Yeah, true.
And then it all just spirals. Okay, so you go over, you go in the tunnel on the tennis court. And so did you have any stock in that company at the time? Because you said it went up to be worth $1 billion.
Really sad story. That's a really, really sad story, because we were, I can't remember the exact number, but we were about 4-5 months away from IPO. Yeah. And 9/11 happened.
Shit.
Everything put on hold. Everything stopped.
Wow.
Everything just disappeared, and it was a horrible time in Silicon Valley.
How did that obviously it affected the mood in a negative way, but were there any leaders during that time that inspired you with how they reacted to it? Because it must have been most tough for them. Was there any in particular stand out for how they dealt with it? I
think at the time I still felt like quite a small cog in these big wheels. Yeah. So I wasn't really seeing that leadership. I was still just, if you like, just a little consultant that was doing my little bits of the jigsaw puzzle. So perhaps less about that sort of seeing the leadership. It was more the direct impact on me of what was going on, and just seeing everything being put on hold. Therefore, deals not coming. And suddenly our $1 million a month rental for the property was, oh, hang on, that feels a little bit expensive now. It didn't a few months ago.
Yeah. Wow.
That all came up.
Just fallen off,
literally.
So what then?
Well, I ended up at Tibco.
Okay. Because that was a more established business that wasn't on the growth curve that needed the trajectory.
Yeah. So very much Tibco was, and I was doing a little bit of pre-sales, a bit of consultancy again.
How did the job come about?
I think I went looking for that one, to be honest. Yeah, because
you saw.
Yeah. But
they were spending $1 million a month on their office. This might not last.
Yeah, suddenly the first class tickets home weren't so readily available.
Suddenly you're in the back of the plane.
Yes. So, but Tibco was great. Again, it taught me so much about sort of service bus, enterprise integrations, all of those sort of bits and pieces. I know the founder of Tibco, Vinod Khosla. He always talked about the way he had created, and I don't know whether it is true, but whether he had created or not, but the whole concept of publish and subscribe, which just changes computing. Just some of these key events that you think, wow, that key concept changes everything.
Who's the most amazing in all that Silicon Valley time? Because after Tibco, did you leave Silicon Valley? Was that you done? Okay, so in that time, from arriving at Oracle, not knowing you were going to be put down the escape tunnel into the other opportunity, through 9/11, through Tibco, like you're in the number one place in the world for computing, in one of the number one eras for the world. I'd say, aside from maybe now in this AI revolution, I think there and here are probably the two. Yeah. So you're in the number one place on earth for that at one of the top 2 times in history to be there. Who are the people that you met that you thought, geez, they are super impressive? Who really stood out? And if they had an impact on you, I'd be interested to know as well.
Yeah, they're less people that I met, but people I was aware of. So Larry Ellison, CEO of Oracle at the time. I was always impressed with how he was actually sort of dealing with certain issues that were coming up. I think for me it was the Bill Gates, it was Larry Ellison, it was those sorts of big punchers, and I wasn't necessarily involved or meeting these people, but just seeing how they were growing these massive organizations, and how Oracle were buying, acquiring so many different businesses and growing that way. So I was kind of inspired with how these things, but it was on such a different level that it never, sort of came to me that I could be anything more than a little pawn in these sorts of games. Yeah,
really? That's interesting. But not everybody can try and be those people, and I think too many people these days do, right? Too many people try.
Yeah.
I love it. Did you see anything crazy there? Because there was, the big offices and anything else. Did you see anything? Because you've come from being in Bedfordshire, and then all of a sudden you're in Silicon Valley. Did you see anything and you thought, what are these guys doing?
I think that kind of came later, funnily enough.
Did it?
I mean, I'm really lucky, we working with the likes of Google and Apple and Cisco and those sorts of companies later on in my career, seeing things like the Googleplex and, just having a spaceship in your front office and slides. And sort of seeing some of those sorts of principles around different global Google offices, for example, really, really inspired me. I did actually, when I came back, I ended up just falling into the world of employee benefits, really.
Right.
So software for employee benefits. And that's really, where I in fact, I did a little stint, a couple of years with a company in Atlanta, Georgia, again on employee benefits, but that led me to another company in London that was very specifically employee benefits. Okay. And they were the guys that were starting to win Google and companies like that.
So they're a tool to organise employee benefits, and my other half she's a people partner at DeepMind, which is Google, right? So she uses exactly these things.
Exactly. So she'll probably be using the software still that I engineered in those days.
Love that. Okay, so that's a far cry. So was there a like back down to earth moment when you came back to the UK, having been in Silicon Valley? Because I remember having worked in San Francisco, and I've seen all sorts of nonsense happen in the Silicon Valley bubble. When I got out of that, I was like, whoa, like back to real life. Because it is a Disneyland to a certain extent, isn't it?
I suppose, but I actually took some time to come back to the UK. And what I mean by that is when I came back to the UK, I got in touch with a guy that I'd worked with years before. Okay. And we ended up setting up a business, and it was all trying to... what I'd actually seen in California was a lot of use of Indian companies at the time, which was fairly new, of course, at that time. That sort of stuff. So coming back to the UK, it was a case of, well, hang on, the UK isn't doing that very much, all this offshoring. So why don't we set up a company that does all the introductions to offshore companies across the likes of China, India, Russia, Vietnam, those sort of places at the time. And so we started to create a database of software companies in those places. We actually went over to a few and actually sort of did due diligence. And then, we spent a year trying to sell those companies for organisations that were looking for bespoke software.
Did it work?
And not really.
Why not?
I still absolutely say the principle was very sound.
Up until you said not really, I thought it was going to work.
We were slightly too early.
Okay.
We were a two-man band, and I think we weren't necessarily, we were engineers rather than salespeople.
Yeah,
and I think it was just that mixture of too early, not the sales background that we needed, trying to get into the bigger markets than we should have done.
Yeah, because you've had sales experience at this point, but you've always been part of a group.
It's never been direct sales.
Yeah.
It's always been the pre-sales or whatever.
Fascinating. But you've done the entrepreneurial thing. So you've had a go. Good for you.
Yeah.
I know firsthand how brutal it is. The roles in between what you're doing now of note are the Googles, are they? Everyone else. So how did they come about? What was the...
Well, those were through the second employee benefit organisation I worked for.
Okay.
I mean, I literally was introduced to the CEO one day at an event by a joint colleague or friend, and it was a case of, if ever you're bored, come and talk to me.
Because of what? What was it about you that he said, if you're ever bored, come and talk to me?
Well, this was a sales guy, so I think I'd probably helped make his numbers in previous employment, shall we say.
Okay.
And so he was introducing me to his CEO where he was, and
in like a consultative technical pre-sales type, that's what he's got in his head that you offer. Do you think at that time?
I think at the time, employee benefits was a very small new world,
right?
From a technology point of view.
Yeah.
So it was a case of he was introducing somebody that had a lot of skill in this area, a lot of technical background, but also again could speak the business language.
Yeah.
So I ended up working for this organisation. They made a role for me.
So you rang the guy.
Yeah.
And you were like, actually,
I remember that conversation.
Yeah, I've done that a few times. Right? when I started the business, there was a couple of people that I rang up and I said, remember a couple of years ago you said, if you ever start a business, give me a call. Here it is. And then the investment came, which was great. Yeah. Same thing for you.
I remember the first, so they created a role for me. It's created when it's called global. What was it? Global consultant of some sort. I can't remember the title now.
That'll do.
Global consultant. Okay, that means they've made it up.
Did you pick your money?
A little bit somewhere.
But that's great, and that's a different thing to. Did that feel different to when you just felt like you were a small cog in the wheel? So is that the time when you're like, suddenly
I felt empowered and important.
Part of it.
And my very first afternoon there, my first day, I was marched across to Google's offices, and on the way, my new boss told me, he said, we need you to run this project. You've got 3 months to deliver it. Please don't tell them you're new, because the rest of the team is, and they're not very happy. And so that was my introduction by fire into Google.
Are you glad that's the way it happened? Looking back at it,
it made a lot of other things happen. And yes, we did manage to deliver it in the 3 months. I think Google taught me so much.
Yeah,
they taught me so much collaboration, and it was when the early days of Google Docs and things like that. So the idea of actually having a document that multiple people could edit.
For sure.
This was fantastic.
So what was it you delivered at Google?
So it was a global employee benefits solution.
Okay, so on this pod we have had Pratap Gautam, who joined Amex, and the day he joined Amex, they said, your role's gone, what do you know about mobile payments? And he then in 6 months delivered mobile payments for Amex globally.
Yeah.
You join an employee benefits platform, and on the day you join, the guy walks you across the courtyard on the way to Google and says, you've got to deliver an employee benefits platform to Google, and you managed to do it in 6 months.
In 3 months.
3 months. Very well done. Very well done.
But I had experience from another company doing similar software.
Don't play it down. You went into Google and you did it. That's amazing. Good on you. So you finish it, and then what?
Well, the other part was that what really changed my role there was the fact that in those 3 months, it's like everyone's saying, we've won Google. Yeah. So anyone would do, or everyone would do anything I asked.
You're back at the front of the plane.
It was absolute drive this and deliver that sort of solution.
That's
and that
amazing.
Was really...
That's amazing. Oh, that'll be cut out. Yeah. We can cut that out, right? Yeah, the door going. Yeah, cool. That's amazing. Yeah. I love that. We'll need to pull this door closed, I think. So once you've done that, you've got this thing delivered in 3 months.
Yeah.
Do you stay at the company and do that for other clients?
Yeah. So Silicon Valley talks. You might think that all these companies are competitive, but seriously, Google talks to Apple, Apple talks to Cisco, and suddenly we were doing the same thing for basically 8 of the top 10 global technology companies.
Amazing.
You know, HP, IBM, Microsoft, and they were all taking the same SaaS platform that we were developing.
Brilliant.
So it was a fantastic time, and really, really growing.
Would you say that's your career highlight, that phase of delivering that
It's
software to
certainly
those
one
companies?
of them. Yeah, certainly one of those early days in that company. We were just. I always say, look, seeing some of the ways of Apple working taught me so much about customer experience and putting customer first. I said about the collaboration from Google, and then Cisco was another early adopter of the technology. And although we were selling a global platform, we were still a small London-based UK software company that didn't really know much about employee benefits globally. So every time we went into another country with Cisco, it was like, right, let's scramble, let's find out what we know about all the benefits.
That's exactly as it should be. Isn't it amazing how you took different things from working with those different companies? So after every high comes a low.
Yeah, true.
What happened?
So maybe I got too big for my boots. I took on a director role at a competitive company.
Oh, money talks, doesn't it? Was it money that took you to the company?
Well, yes and no.
Because if I'm the competitor and I see you rolling this out, I say, I don't care what you need to be paid, come across and all.
Yeah. But maybe I didn't do my due diligence enough, really, because this was a product that had problems in the past, and they were insurmountable problems.
Fine.
But it was a case of I ended up taking on a product that I know I could fix.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter how well I fixed it, because it had broken so many salespeople in the organisation globally before I joined. No one would touch it, and that was its downfall.
Did that company end up?
No, it's still around. It still does little bits and pieces because it's part of a massive global organisation now. Fine. But it's still there.
So from there.
I laughed originally, by the way, Liam, when you first told me that we could probably talk for hours. Now I'm thinking, we'll be lucky for 20 minutes.
Do you know the most amazing thing? We've got a bit of time left, but the most amazing thing about this is because nobody does slow down and go, okay, why did that thing connect to that thing? And it's a really special thing to have people that have achieved what you've achieved come in and tell the story. So I really appreciate it. So if we go from the low after the high, various roles between then and now, but now, what is your role? What do you do today?
So I work at NatWest.
Yep.
In the payments area.
Yep.
And I am a head of product. And I say that specifically. So I look after very much the onboarding, the in-life services around the payments area of NatWest. Yeah. So that's if you like my specialism. But I work in the brands. So Till and Pay It. Till by NatWest, Pay It by NatWest.
TYL by NatWest.
Yeah, that's the one. And of course, we were a small organisation. So when I actually joined that organisation about 2.5 years ago, we were outside of NatWest. We were just in the NatWest incubators, but a separate limited company.
Oh, wow.
And it was only when we made our first 10,000 customers that we were actually consumed by the bank and started to become that sort of payments part of NatWest.
Had you worked for a bank before this or not?
I'd worked with many banks, but not for banks.
Fine. How different is it?
I've worked in large organisations like Oracle as well, so I understood politics. And we've skipped out loads of the career, but so I understood what I was getting into.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, almost trying to be a fintech within a large bank organisation, because you have to protect the brand, you have to protect the organisation. Yeah. So naturally, there's so many sort of governance models and things that we have to look after when sort of introducing any type of new product.
Is it UK focused?
At the moment, yes, very much. Yeah. Okay. Although we're starting with the Pay It brands, starting to look at other opportunities wider than the UK.
Love it. Do you, considering all the things you've done, what is it about what you do now that excites you the most?
Is it excitement, or is it actually the frustration that I'm trying to overcome?
There's going to be frustration in, I think frustration shows you care.
Yeah.
which is a good thing. And if you can try and channel that and turn it into excitement, trust me, I'm doing it all the time. Because there's got to be elements of what you're doing that you think, yeah, this is awesome. Like, we're really cracking something here. What is that within this role? So
for me, it's about being empowered to project the future on what this industry should be like. So for me, it's looking at how do we put the customer first? How do we put that customer experience? How do we minimise what they have to do to get what they need done? And so for me, I have lots of frustration about how we separate sometimes things like onboarding and risk. And my vision is, how do I actually pull all of these things together? The adage of sort of agile and failing fast. Yeah. Why do I have to go through whole applications before I find that I'm not eligible for a product? And so let's actually get those risk things forward in the process and start to bring that flexibility across the board. And for the benefit of the customer, of course. Yeah.
It often confuses me, being in this space myself, how infrequently the customer is put at the centre of the decisions that are made. Blows my mind, because if the customer will vote with their feet.
I don't think I quite see that. I don't see that. I think everyone wants to put the customer first.
It's whether they do.
It's a lot of legacy in banks, and we've all said, that's the difference between fintech, who are very agile, able to change on the dime, sort of thing, whereas legacy of banks, they've got a lot of baggage to actually sort of move around and change in order to do that. So I think there is the flexibility, there is the want to do this, there is the vision to put the customer in front of the pile of everything we're doing. But we know we've got all this different governance. We've got all these other considerations to make as we do so.
It's hard.
It is hard, and there comes the frustration. Yeah,
you'll get around it. So I always ask for predictions, industry predictions, in particular for in our space, like identity. I think, broadly speaking.
Yeah.
So, there's a ton of different routes here that we could explore. There's reusable ID. What do you think in terms of how we validate who people are? What do you think? What's they going to look like in 5 years?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because I actually look interestingly at the European markets, where if you look at places like Germany and those sort of places where they have their IDs, and the ID is now becoming if you like, a passport for my identity. And I think that we in the UK need to follow some of those sort of guidances. So I do believe that you will have independent people or independent organisations that will store an identity and prove that is a person that is being used. And if banks can start using that sort of external source, then that's where it needs to come.
With the benefit of us not having to sign up to everything every time we go to something.
Exactly. Yeah. So here's my identity. Just scan this code or whatever, and I've proved who I am, because I've already done it once for many other organisations. And that's not even inside just financial services. That could be everywhere.
Everything, marketplaces, insurance, travel, the whole lot.
And I see this happening in Europe, but not necessarily here at the moment. I think we need to really learn and start following those trends.
There's a few things we could learn from Europe. It's a shame we're not part of it. Mate, that was amazing. Thanks so much. And that concludes another episode of Not What I Expected. I hope you loved that as much as I loved recording it. If you like it, let us know. If you don't, tell us how you think it could be better. Thanks, and see you again.